A very warm welcome to Professor Karl Lauterbach, Professor for Clinical Epidemiology and Health Economics at the University of Cologne and health expert as the SPD group at the German Bundestag. The COVID-19 crisis has by now reached 199 countries worldwide and more than 500,000 people are infected. WHO has declared the global outbreak to be a pandemic. Professor Lauterbach, what do you consider the biggest deficits we are facing right now? How well is our world community prepared for this kind of crisis?
Unfortunately, I think that the world is not very well prepared for such a crisis. No one expected such a pandemic to spread globally so quickly, and countries are lacking pandemic plans. Countries are lacking doctors and nurses in many places of the world where the healthcare systems as such are already under stress. And in industrialized countries where, let's say, such an infectious disease pandemic hasn't occurred for a very long period of time, we are also underprepared. We lack masks, we lack ventilation support, we lack certain drugs. So let's put it simply, in poorer countries, personnel and money is missing, and in richer countries, very often equipment is missing and nurses are missing.
Thank you so much. By now, the crisis has inspired drastic action by countries everywhere across the globe. And you just mentioned that everywhere lacks are taking place, equipment is missing, personnel is missing. Do you agree that it is so crucial that we pull all efforts together?
It will not be possible to defeat this pandemic without the countries working together grand scale. First of all, travel restrictions, for example, need to be implemented in order to contain the disease, but we also have to make sure that, let's say, the global economy does not collapse. So that is an important field of collaboration. Secondly, we need to speed up our research efforts at a scale which we have never done before. So international collaboration instead of, let's say, blame sharing, that is what is needed nowadays. We need to collaborate internationally in order to find a vaccination and also treatments as quick as possible. And ultimately, many countries will have major economic problems, turmoils. So we need to stand together and support those countries that otherwise would not sustain this crisis without bankruptcy or, let's say, financial state crisis, which it would take many years basically to heal.
You just mentioned the economic crisis of a global outreach we are all risk to face. However, you also mentioned that low-income countries and developing countries are facing major risks of an economic fallout. So what would you consider is Europe's task at the moment in the face of this crisis?
Europe, in my opinion, does have two tasks at least. First of all, Europe needs to stand together. So we want to make sure that Europe itself is not falling apart, because some countries in Europe will have major financial problems. Their, let's say, state loans may become very expensive, so they need our support. So keeping Europe together, keeping Europe functioning is task number one. And task number two is basically to make sure that Europe helps others and also accepts the help others. I was impressed that, for example, China was supporting Italy. We are supporting Italy. In the long run, we need to support countries that have to deal with the crisis later when we are in a better shape. So Europe has a task in, let's say, staying together, helping each other, not falling apart, and also in helping other continents and being a leader in, let's say, dealing with democracy, with freedom, liberty, and also without infringements on personal freedom. So I think Europe has a very big, important role.
I couldn't agree more on what you just said, and you emphasized how important global responsibility is in the face of this crisis. So how do we ensure that this global responsibility really comes to the mind of everyone, and what needs to happen in Germany in this regard?
Well, in Germany, we have to, first of all, provide whatever we can to those who are in bigger needs than us. We also have to make sure that no one is blamed for the crisis. We must make sure that this crisis does not lead to another, let's say, surge of populist regimes, does not lead to more, let's say, ethnocentrism. So Europe needs to make clear that we can deal with this in Europe and remaining a free continent. That is very important. And also it is important that we do not, let's say, act in a way that we appear to be in a better position than others. This is a crisis where we are all at the same level, where we are all the same. It very much stresses our vulnerability. It stresses a vulnerability that should at best bring together poorer countries and richer countries. And Germany has to play a leading role in making sure this is a one world enterprise in environmental issues, but also in pandemic issues. So we can only manage major crises together, stand together, do it rationally, and do it compassionately.
Thank you so much for these final remarks and this very insightful interview and your time. And we from Global Perspectives Initiative wish everyone good health and lots of strength for the next weeks.